Yeah, Invoke-ATTCK Owl, an introduction to cyber ornitho ontology. You get the joke somewhere further down the line, I hope. Thanks to the sponsors for hosting this event. On the agenda for today, we're going to talk about cyber ontology and what's that for. We're going to talk about cyber owls, and I'll present some of the birds that I built around ATTCK, and then I'll just do demo and a round of questions. So to set the expectation, there is PowerShell in there, but we'll talk about a lot of different stuff, and we're going to see how PowerShell glues everything together. And hopefully, just like Tobias said this morning, maybe this talk is here to show how I do stuff. It's far from perfect, but maybe to inspire you guys to pick it up, take it further, collaborate, or if you find it interesting. Who am I? Online, I go by the name of Sat Processor, Walter Legowski, so it's a running gag. It's not my real name, but I'll stick to it. That's how I'm known in the community. I'm now a detection engineer at Falcon Force. So when I came 3 years ago, I used to work in Germany. Now I work in Holland. I'm still French. I still PowerShell all the things. I like windows, cats, and trees with no order. I'm a father of 3. And I guess just like all of you, I'm super happy to be back physical in the community. For me, like remote does not bring the same level of satisfaction. Less stress preparing, but then less reward delivering. So I really like the physical talks. This is a bit how it looks in my head. As you can see, it's a bit of a mess, but you see PowerShell holds a special place. And with PowerShell, I navigate all the different, let's say, items that we use in security. Thank God I have a job. It's better organized. So this is what we do at Falcon Force. We're a little shop with like 15 people, and we do red teaming, purple teaming, detection engineering, and mostly we help customer in building up their Sentinel capacities, along with the knowledge we have of what our red team does. So there's a very close collaboration between the red and the blue, and this is how I think we produce value, basically. So today I'm right there doing the little presentation. Most of the day we do research, training, and development based around this cyber knowledge tree. Try to fill it up, develop it, and this is what we use in engagement with the customers to then do red teaming or purple teaming or simply some mitigation or workshops or anything you can think of. But it's very much based around this tree of knowledge, and this is what I'm going to try and detail today. Sorry. So what is cyber? I put a little tag of words here. You can choose your favorite. Maybe some of them have a meaning, maybe some of them don't. We like to use a lot of paramilitary vocabulary in security, so it often sounds like we're going at war. There's a bit of that, but yeah, I really like the field. I think it's a very dynamic field. There's new techniques, new coming out, and you need to stay up to date, understand them, be able to reproduce them. So yeah. For me, cybersecurity is mostly knowledge management, basically. You need to be able to stay on top, so Twitter is an awesome source to get the initial, hey, something is happening, there's a blog post here, you can go dig there, try to figure it out, research it, and then produce value out of it for the customers. So mostly in my vision, a lot of it is based on how do you animate knowledge in your team, how do you share that, how do you communicate all this, and how do we between shops, because that's also something in cybersecurity, we're less competitors than maybe in other fields of the IT, because yeah, security is one big cake and we often share with other shops. That's less of a problem. So growing this common knowledge tree, and this is what we're going to do today, the ontology. So what is ontology? In computer science and information science, ontology encompasses the representation, formal naming and definition of the categories, property, and relationship between concept, data, and entities that substantiate one, many, or all domains of discourse. That's complex, so I'll read the second one. More simply, it's a way of showing properties and how, or objects of a field and how they are related. So this is what we're going to do today. We're going to try and picture the cyberverse. And this is a representation that we could give of it with all those different objects and how they relate. So if you come back to the cloud of words that I showed already, maybe some of them you could start to say, hey, that was a group. Hey, that was a technique. That was a tactique. And we can start to place them in the right bits. Now is the moment I say it's all connected, and I have to thank my colleagues for this meme, because I do say it's all connected all the time, so they made a meme of me, and I thank them for providing me with the part of my slide deck, so thanks guys. The difference between knowledge bricks and a real ontology is the relationship. I think this slide is just here to illustrate the difference. When stuff are connected in a logical way, they suddenly look different, right? And this is what we're going to do. So I made some relationships here. You might not understand them now. I will explain throughout the talk. But globally, if you look at these objects already, you see on one side we have what will be definition of objects, techniques, software, tactic groups. Then you have stuff that is more executable, detection, execution, mitigation. That's probably a switch you can flip somewhere, code you can run. And then you will see artifacts, so they could be events or findings or IOC. And we put all this into a report that goes to the customer, basically. So here you have theory, there you have research. Here we try to measure something and then we share it. If I put an adjective on it, this should be commonly shared by the whole community. Sorry. Actions should be reproducible, so if I give you a piece of code, you should be able to run it and get the same result. The capture should be measurable, so this is how we get metrics out of the volume, for example. And then what we share should be understandable by the rest of the community. Now let's imagine a breach happened and it's in the news, right? So classic, I don't know, take the last one. There's a few. And let's see how that applies to our model here. So it will start, let's say, in this scenario that I give. We're going to start by the breach. It's in the news, and we're going to climb the tree backwards. But actually, we, like bees, we all work on this tree, and you can start anywhere. At the end, we all manipulate that. So here, it's in the news. The forensics guys come in, try to find IOCs, try to find the events in the logs, and they can then deduct what has been executed, make that a finding, and output a report. From that point on, threat intel, so that's another job in the security area, can take this report, pull everything back to the level of theory this time, and start naming stuff or putting it under the right category. If you work in auditing, mostly you have a technique, you try to execute it. If it works, you have a finding. You can apply the mitigation if it exists, and that's mostly the area where you work in. If you work in the blue team, like I do, when there's a new technique, for example, we take this technique, we try to run it, we try to catch the event that it generates, and then from there, try to build a detection for that technique. Actually, we build a detection for an execution that is related to a technique, right? So there's a slight gotcha here. Then comes the red team, and they're the guys simulating a bad group. Let's say we want to imitate APT29 and see what tools they use, what techniques they use, and same thing, we can produce a report. And then you have purple teaming, It's just super theoretical, so you could contest those definitions, but let's say purple teaming is red teaming with an extra dose of blue, where you would fully cooperate with the opposite blue team to kind of help them fine-tune their detection to detect what you're doing as a red teamer, right? So it's a more complete loop. That's basically the tree we can build. I like to go back to the Sumerian tree of cyber knowledge. 1337 before our era, so it dates quite back. And you can recognize two of the defensive entities, detect and harden. So these are two of the pillars of defense. You would have deflect and all this after, but the two basics ones are hardening, of course, and then detection if it can be hardened, right? Not everything can be hardened. So it's not all just in my head, a bit. But those entities exist, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So I mentioned already a bit earlier attack, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like. But here you see the coverage of different tools, how they cover the whole tree, basically, and you see that no one tool covers the whole tree. Hatchery and watchery, I'll talk about tomorrow. So if you guys want to come to my talk tomorrow, I'm actually watching who's here. I'll make sure you're here tomorrow. But today we're going to talk about attack, the atomic red team, the OSEM project, and Prelude, and see how I glue all this with PowerShell. So starting with attack, what does attack stand for? So it stands for the adversarial tactique, technique, and common knowledge. It's not something that I built. It's actually quite big in the industry nowadays. So you can find this online on the attackmitre.org. And what is attack? It's written here. It's a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary technique based on real-world observation. I'll skip all the rest, and then it says attack is open and available to any person or organization for use at no charge. So it's basically the encyclopedia of cyber, let's say. And what I like about this is when I say, I don't know, golden ticket, then I want to be sure you understand the same thing and you understand the same thing. So this is a way of aligning and calling objects by their name. They have a definition, they live somewhere, and you can use this in your daily work to kind of, I don't know, produce reports or... And in Mitre, so you have different matrices. I'm going to talk about the enterprise matrix. And that's basically, so you get here all the different tactiques. So here we're chunking cyber into, okay, what was the adversary trying to do in general? And you see reconnaissance, initial access, execution, persistence, and so on. And in all these tactics, have to be careful. Here we start to find all the different techniques, and they all have a reference, so you can click on every single one of them, and each of them is again an object with a definition, with some metadata, and so on. And you start to understand that, hey, there's objects behind here, so can we play with it with PowerShell, right? So I just show you where it lives on GitHub. This Mitre is actually what I use in my tool here. And you can find a whole JSON file that holds all the data here. So JSON and PowerShell are quite good friends. If you invoke a web request, you just get all the objects back, and this is what we're going to do. So that's one project, keep it in mind. Then I want to quickly, and I'll mention them now, talk about the atomic red team and OSEM and the way they relate. In my job, for example, it's nice to have the theory, but at some point, thank you. At some point, I need code to execute. And Mitre will not give you this, right? It gives you a technique, golden ticket. It describes it with a definition, but it doesn't give you eventually the code to execute that. Whereas atomic red team does. OSEM is the open source event monitoring. So it's just a way of all those events, Windows events or any other type of event. There's just this database of events, what they mean, their definition, their provider. So I also use this to be able, when I launch a technique, to know in what event I can go look into, right? I'll show you. So what is Atomic Red Team? It's made by the guys at Red Canary in the US. There's a fancy website for it. You can look it up here, but basically it's kind of the pending to attack, but this time with code. So for each technique in attack, they might have 10 or different 20 ways of executing it, and they will give you the code. I don't want to show you their website. I want to show you this one. So the links here, I'll share the slides on, but yeah, you can find links also to people who work with it. Same thing here, we can find somehow all the Atomic Red Team here, and you see that they're referenced by attack technique ID, and let's just look at one object, but that's what it looks like. So there's a description, there's a up, and there's here the code that you would be running, for example. Right there, commands, up. So that's for the atomic. Keep it in mind, I'm going to use this in my, if you wonder where I get these objects from, that's where I get them. And then the last one I want to show you is the OSEM project. And that's just open source event monitoring. There's a lot in there, but just know that what you're going to see when I show the OSEM command in PowerShell comes from this. So they don't all come from attack. I put everything in one tool, but I grab different stuff from everywhere. So that was the title I gave, Gathering the Cyber Scattered. That was the idea, to go get all those stuff, put them in one place, format them the way I like, and create the commandlets that you can use to to dig through it. So yeah, Cyber Owls, what's that for? So I introduced the, let's say, the blocks I'll be using, attack, OSEM, and Atomic Red Team. And I build tools to talk to each of them. So just in general, like in computing, that's with my French accent, objects with links. So that's why I call them the owl. Also because I work at Falcon Force, so now all my tools are owls. I don't know, it's a bird of prey as well, right? So they told me I could become what I wanted, and so I became a power cyber ornitho-ontologist. Now you get the joke, so we're doing cyber, there's owls, and we're doing ontology. Now that we're all done with the intro, my goal was to build a tool set that I can use just one technique and quickly get all the different bits, maybe software tactic groups who uses the technique, associated findings, eventual execution, or the events that goes with this technique from a single set of commandlets. So these are the birds that I built, and you see that the attack owl, the green one, actually covers all three, Atomic Red Team, attack, and the OSEM. Hatchery, watchery, I said that already, that's for tomorrow. I'll show you purple owl at the end, which is just a way to show that with the PowerShell pipeline, I can move from my first tool to another tool, and they're connected via attack technique, and I can, over the pipeline, jump directly into a different set of objects. That's for the last bit, but now we're going to have a look at this set of commands. So this is what I built. Yeah. Once you know the verb, it's easy. I want to get it. There's no way you're going to manipulate that. It's just standard definition, and we get them. And then you have the object. So probably in my demo, I don't have the get in front. Jeffrey Snover is not here, so he's not going to call me a bad boy. But yeah, I did real commandlets, and they do have a real verb in front. No worries. So let's give it a shot. He's not here. Oopa, attack owl. So the first thing you have to do, oh, because I wasn't.
It's classified.
What's the deal? I'm an old school guy. Did you turn it off and on again? some IT talent in there, huh? Yeah, I know. So the first thing you would do, but I'm not going to do it because it takes, or I can do it actually here maybe. Yes. I'm going to run this one on this one. So import ATT&CK Owl. I'm going to do, so yeah, when I do all edges here, I'm doing it because for the demo there's some stuff I want to show you with this. So I'm doing all edges. You can skip that and it will skip some of the relationship that you might use less. And the only reason is because it takes actually quite a while to transform or import all the relationship. But basically he's going to tell you so. This is going to take a while. Coffee or cola? Thank you. I'm going to run anyway. And we're moving to the other one. So in this other session, I have them imported already. If you start by doing, you see it, ATT&CK Owl, it will give you just, wait, let me give you more screen estate. Just the command list that you have in the module. So this is the one I run without the get, ATT&CK Owl. It gives you some info on the module. I like to do this when I have modules where I create all the commandlets. I give them a strange name, and this first name is the way to get all the commandlets. That makes it easy. I've put some statistics in there just so that you know what we're looking at. We're looking at 133. So that's when I did the import. He went and grabbed all this from all the different websites. So we're looking at different groups, and you see why it's taking long when I import all the relationships. There's like quite a lot of connection between the different objects in there. And if I do stat without the short, you get a bit more, oops. What do I need to do here? PowerShell class. Format table. I was expecting this. So it looks better like so. So this is what is actually in my tray. If you break it down per platform, let's say. So for Windows initial access, I have 18 techniques that I can use and so on. So 131 for defense evasion, for example. So it really is a great, it started small, but now the project is big enough that it does cover quite a lot of what you can see in cybersecurity, and yeah, you can find in there a lot of info. So let's have a look at what this looks like. We're going to start with the ATT&CK because they're kind of a bucket where we can put techniques in. It's not a one-to-one, so a technique can cover several tactics, right? So you can do this for lateral movement or privilege escalation, or so the mapping is never one-to-one, and it's why it's quite complex object at the end, because there's a lot of relationships in there. So like I said, you don't need the get, but I guess you got that already. And here we have all the tactics, so they're the same as you saw on the website with their brief definition, for example. And you can search, which is already more complex on the website. So simple stuff, but show me the tactic with the description says keylogin, that works. You can use partial words because I'm a bad typist, so usually my commandlets are not too demanding. They're also prone to errors, but I live with it, that's okay. So we can, of course, format list, and you see the object looks a bit better. And then I kind of gave format, because there's some properties I don't want to see, so I need to do the select all this time. For example, those are pure like reference. When I look at the object, I don't want to see those dates. So this I add type, and that's nice. Nice little switch in there is the online switch. So if I do this, it takes me online. I told you, yeah, I'm a bad typist, so the less I have to do it, the better it is. Yeah, and then for a given tactic, let's say here credential access, I just type cred, but it's the tactic called credential access. I can ask for all the techniques that goes with it. You see there's a few, so we're going to do this. Up. And here for credential access, these are all the techniques that are described in my tray. One thing I have to say, when it's described in my tray, it means this has been seen in a while, used by real adversaries during campaigns, right? and it's in official reports from whoever big shop you know that produces those type of intelligent reports. Those techniques have been used in a while by real threat actors, right? So let's dive into the techniques. If you just get them all, you get a, oops, did I put a breakpoint? You get attack. I'll do the one below, I know that one works. Probably it's get attack technique, the real, maybe. I never use it, I only use my aliases. But you do see there's quite a lot of them, right? So we need a way to filter that. The easiest way is just to give a keyword, for example. So attack silver will pop out the silver ticket, for example. Same here, I'm being large, meaning sometimes I return more stuff than I want, but you have to know it. And same thing here, they all have the same switch. So every time you can do online, it will take you there. Oop. We can have a look at the reference, that's really interesting. So for this golden technique, show me all the reports, the documentation that you use to create this. And then you can also, if you were gonna want to dive into a golden ticket, I can do something like this. Bing, 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 bing. And then I can start to read all the stuff I need to read to start building my detection rule and so on. So it's a nice way for me to quickly find the technique and open all the pages that I need to have a look at to get smarter on the topic. You can of course reference them by their technique as well, so the name or partial name or the technique will work here. And you can say, for example, that I want to see all the sub-techniques that go with this technique just by adding the little dash sub. So here in my tray, the general technique is T1158, steal or forge Kerberos ticket, and there are sub-techniques associated to this one, and that could be your golden ticket, your silver ticket, Kerberos sting, or AS repros. Do these four mean anything to everybody here? You heard about it already? Yeah? Okay. I think if we deal with Kerberos, these are the type of attack to try to interfere during the Kerberos TGT and TGS. So that's for the techniques. I'll come back to them later in the demo. Quickly, I show you the groups, because that's always interesting. So who are the bad guys? One thing to keep in mind, my tray is open source and made for everybody, but it's made by the US and Europe, right? So what we call an adversary in the US and in Europe might not be the same thing that they call an adversary in, when I say China or Russia, for example. So there are two worlds looking at each other. A lot of the groups described here are actually not from the US. We all know the US has the same capacities, right? Yeah?
Multiple groups have multiple names, so.
Yeah. That's the poetry of it, the beauty of it. I love those names. Some of them are super nice. But we can do something like this. So we can do ATT&CK group. And if I say panda, where am I going? If I say panda, all of these that have panda in their name, or alias, because here I see only the name, but you see I said panda and he still returns their names because they have alias. I can show you exactly the alias also, but yeah, when I say panda, I go to China. If I put a bear here, where am I going? Yes, there's a few of them. Up, so yeah, you can do that, and yeah, just here for APT29, for example. So APT29 is also Cozy Bear. That's him, APT29. And you can read, of course, the definition. You can find all his aliases here. I can expand them there. You see they have quite a few names. That actually comes from the fact that when they're observed, we first can't really attribute, right? So you give a name, one shop gives a name, another shop gives another name. And then later down the line, we say, hey, there's a lot of similitude in the way they operate, in the tools they use, in the code, and at some point, you get a merger. There was one not so long ago. They were super happy. They can take an enemy off the list. It's actually only one. So it's quite cool. In there, you also have software. So when we talk about software, we talk about tools used to do bad stuff. Part of it is malware and labeled as such. So I can probably do a where type. Have you noticed tab completion here on the properties after the tab? Yeah, okay. Where type equals malware. Oh no, I can do actually attack software. Maybe that's better. Group type. Group object. Sorry for the PowerShell 7 people. Since you guys came in, I can't use my short aliases anymore. So yeah, we have malware, and that's considered purely developed to be offensive in capacity, and we have regular tools. Yeah, adversaries are just like you. If there's a good tool made by Microsoft, why build another one, right? So a lot of a lot of the game is blending in. And the more you behave like an admin, use admin tools, and just abuse configuration, the harder you are to spot, basically. And that's the game most advanced adversary play nowadays. Let's have a look. Attack software with power in the name. Yes. APTs also have good taste, and they recognize the value of PowerShell as a powerful tool. And yeah, why not use it to build if it's powerful? You guys find it powerful. APTs find it powerful too. This being said, and I think Jeffrey Snover and Lee Holmes closed the debate on that, PowerShell is the most secure to use. They also use Python. You have less visibility in Python than you have in PowerShell. So even though you see a lot in the news, PowerShell used in a brief, of course, it's a good tool. So of course, yeah. So let's do it the other way around. Just look at what a software has PowerShell in the description, because it's not always in the name. And then you see there's even more of these tools that use PowerShell. I think somehow Jeffrey Snover is probably proud. And he actually had an awesome meme, you can find it, where he says, we know you have choice when it comes to post-exploitation, so thank you for hacking with PowerShell. And that kind of, I think, summed it up perfectly. Another type of objects that was added to attack is the mitigation. So not only do we describe the technique, but we also describe possible mitigations, and I'll show you how they're linked to technique. For now, they're just global buckets with a definition, but nothing really specific to a technique, right? We can get there, and they also, so mitigation, that was for the bottom of the tree, going to the mitigation, but attack also gives you a link to detection, not in the sense of what event can I find, but at least what data source should I be looking into when I want to find this type of behavior. So they give you the data source and the data component. And yeah, that maybe starts to make sense. So it's the group enumeration. So group is the data source, and the component is group enumeration, for example. So, and same thing, that has been added to attack. Here you really get just the definition, so it's not fantastic. Later down the demo, I see you how you get a very specific piece of advice for your technique. Now, if we look at Atomic, that was imported as well, you see here that there's a lot of different stuff, different objects, and basically, yeah, they're exactly like what you saw in YAML. They have an ID, a name, an executor. A lot of them run via PowerShell, and then it tells you what it does, and eventually you can go online and get code. I won't go online and get the code. I get the code via the purple owl, which is another one of my tools when I use Prelude Operator. And Prelude Operator is a C2 framework that actually has all the attack code in it ready to be executed. So it's quite handy, actually. Jumping over this because it's super fast. OSEM, so that was the one on the right, that's another project, but it's the library of events you can get. And they're not only here you will recognize the classical Windows event IDs. Here you have some of the sysmon, for example, but you also here will find some more specific to MDE or AWS events, for example. And you can, same thing, for example, if I just take one event, that's what the object looks like. Well, maybe I format list. Sorry for jumping back and forth. So that's what it looks like, and if we expand the log, maybe that's familiar to some of you. So where does this 4674 come from? It comes from the Microsoft Windows Security Auditing Provider, and that's in the security channel for the platform Windows, right? So this is just a little object, it looks like nothing, but because it has this component into it, on the OSM side, and because Mitre gives you the component, then when I look for a technique and it says, look in this component, I can already quickly find all the events that I'm gonna have to be looking into. It doesn't mean a technique triggers all the events, of course. So there's, of course, a shortcoming to this technique. I connect everything together. It doesn't mean the connection is a real that goes all the way, right? So you have to re-question every hop, but it's a nice way for me when I start to say, hey, Mitre says I have to look for logon session metadata. What events do I have that correspond to this on different platforms, basically? So now, finally, it's all connected. We can connect everything. So here you see me asking for a group, attack group APT29. So if I do just this, I get the group. But if I say software, then it gives me, it goes via the relationships, and it gives me all the software that is being used by APT29, for example. So that's quite cool. I can do, for software, I can ask all the techniques. So here I take Empire, which is a PowerShell post-exploitation framework. And there's, of course, a lot of different techniques you can run with this since it's a framework, but this is what PowerShell Empire covers in terms of Mitre attack, for example. It gets more interesting. If I say attack Kerberos, you get the classical object like I showed you in the beginning. But if I say attack Kerberos and then mitigation, this is where it gets more precise already. So when I ask for mitigation, I get the general definition. If you ask for a mitigation in relation to a specific technique, have a look here. The mitigation becomes super detailed, right? So it really is a database of, yeah, I don't know, man. There's like 600 techniques connected to 10 mitigation each with a specific bit of text for each relationship saying, so actually the bit of text is on the relationship. There's the two objects and they're related. And so, yeah, I find it a great source already for general information. Yeah?
So a lot of vendors use CVE numbers for identifying threats. Is that an attribute of this as well?
So CVE is the common vulnerability enumeration stuff, right? And that's more the number they give to a technique, and you could eventually link that CVE back to specific one or more different attack techniques, but there's no real direct mapping to it. One I can show you maybe, but it's not CVE, it's CWE, the common weakness enumeration. Let me show you this one, because that's actually quite cool. So we talked about red teaming, and we didn't really talk about pen test. What's a pen test? What's a red team? I don't want to get in the debate today, but basically, old school pen test was trying to test the perimeter, an application, and you want to get SQL injection in there or cross-site scripting or whatever to get execution there, right? What you can do, how to bring the pen test back in attack is if you do attack exploit, oops, short maybe. You see here, exploit public facing applications, so this T1190. And if I go into attack 1190, what you see here, they explain, okay, so you're trying to take advantage of, here internet facing, but you also have exploitation once you pass the perimeter for lateral movement, exploitation for privilege escalation. That's the same logic. And once we fall into websites, then the reference is to go, okay, it's a 1190, but to be more precise, you need to go into OWASP. That's something you guys are familiar with, the OWASP project, Open Web Application Security Project, thank you. And then it says, and then dive into the CVE, right? So CVE is again a way of, under this umbrella of injection, be a bit more precise, because you can inject SQL, but you could inject, I don't know, any language if you understand the syntax and what it's doing. So Mitre gives you the bigger picture. You can zoom on one technique, and in this technique, there might be, again, a whole different way of describing things, right? But it still is chunks that you can refer to, and if I say T110 to you, or to you, it will still mean the same thing, right? So that's what I like about Mitre, that at least we're talking the same language, and we can use that. It's more like ingredients you can use in your cooking. Eventually, you could say, I'm going to generate a report out of all this. That might not be the best thing, but you could eventually use this already to build, let's say, a template of a report and let your red team build the storyline, put the meat onto it. But at least the common definitions are here for the tools you used, for the adversary you emulated, for the techniques you use, and the tactic you had in mind. So I did the Kerberos mitigation, gives you mitigation, same thing for detection. So here, if I want to detect Kerberos, what do I have to monitor? You have to monitor command execution, and then it gives you the real Kerberos specific monitoring bit, right? It's not, again, a general definition of command execution, but it's really specific to the technique that it's related to at that moment, right? So I find it really a treasure trove of information, and my goal was to come here and show this to maybe less security people, so that you can also embrace it when you want to know what, I don't know, Mimikatz is, or what it does, or what technique it has inside. Yeah, let's have a look at PowerShell, because we like PowerShell, right? So PowerShell is a technique. Yeah, I know. PowerShell has been classified not as a tool, but as a technique itself. Yes, because you can do a lot of nefarious things with it. Yeah, like I said, I think Python is also a technique, and it has less visibility. So let's have fun. What groups use PowerShell? All of them. I love it. Yeah, like I said, they have taste. What software uses PowerShell? You can do it like this, book, that's nice, but then we come to mitigation around PowerShell, and that's probably something you already heard about in previous conferences, but it's nice to find it recapped here. So first, on the object itself, it gives you why adversaries use this, gives you a little bit of example. It even mentioned the tools that use it. It says you can use PowerShell without PowerShell. I think we're all aware of this, but don't look just for powershell.exe at the command line, because that's, of course, not the way advanced attackers do it. And it gives you a lot of information, but already some consideration around detection. Let me show you mitigation first. Classic mitigation for PowerShell, privilege account management. I think that's something that we're stuck with anyway. We have to manage those accounts and make sure they're not overly permissive and so on. But at the PowerShell level, it says here, it talks about the execution policy and all this. So we're quite happy this made it all the way to Mitre, and they know this exists. Application control, I think that's probably difficult to implement. Not impossible, I would say. Disable or remove features. Do we have to remove anything for PowerShell to be on the safe side? Anybody? Yep, removing the old versions of PowerShell that don't have all this, that don't give all this visibility are still available. If they're on the system, the attacker will drop down just to avoid all the fancy stuff. Dropping PowerShell, code signing, yeah, if you can implement this at scale. Why not? No, I mean, at least start somewhere and expand. But yeah, at scale, I think it's impossible. But when it comes to detection, so what do we monitor for PowerShell? Process creation, process metadata, which module are being loaded, the script execution, the command execution. And because you have all this visibility, and because PowerShell gives you a lot of visibility, probably at the command line level, you can see everything that was executed, right? So it's a telltale if you're trying to do some stuff. What exists on the side of PowerShell, I'm running out of time, guys. I didn't know, sorry. All the atomic tests you will find that can test this specific PowerShell technique and all the different stuff you can test using PowerShell to do XML requests or all this kind of fancy stuff. And this comes with code, so you can test it. I'm going to show you this very quickly. All the events so here, that's where you have to take it with a grain of salt, like we say. I do attack PowerShell, attack knows the data component, and then I say, awesome, so give me all the events that are linked to the data component. So it doesn't mean PowerShell triggers all this, but these are all the events I can go look into when I look for PowerShell being executed, right? So not every technique will trigger all of them. Back to slides, I speed up. There's a lot you can do in this. I hope you find your usage of it, or at least you want to navigate it and see what's in there, because I just like reading it and finding out stuff in there. What I wanted to show you that I did with it, because of course I cannot make a talk without showing some bloodhound graphs. So once I have all these objects, I can, like, again with some PowerShell, transform that into Cypher, push it into a Neo4j database. This is what the whole attack looks like with tactic, technique, and mitigation, and you see the pre and the post exploitation being already divided. I find it funny that the graph shows you stuff like this in the structure. This is what it looks like in a tree attack with all the tactic, all the technique, and the associated mitigation. This is what it looks like with the events, all the tactic, technique, the different data component, and then the event that compose it all the way to the defensive side, so up. This is what it looks like in our repo with the detection rules that we built for Sentinel. So we have the techniques, we have the component, then I have, what am I doing? Technique, component, event. Those are the events, and then I have my Sentinel or MDE rules. So come to my talk tomorrow if you want to see how this also plugs into it. Ah, man. This is what it looks like for a single technique, and you see hump. This is a classic one, valid accounts, everybody's favorite technique. If you have a valid account, it's awesome. And now just a second demo, mini demo, so that's okay. Here on this side, I have another tool that I built. This is a C2 that I mentioned. Here you can launch attack chains. I'm not going to do it, but if I create a session for this tool, I'm already connected. All the TTPs that are in this tool are objects. That's long enough. You can select one. And all, wherever you see ART here is actually this T1503 scheduled task comes from the Atomic Red team, right? It's in this tool, and I can launch them with this tool directly. Just show you an example. Do I have a target? No. That's me, that's my agent. I set it as a target, then I say woot. It's my demo command. Hoop, and it just draws a little purple owl in ASCII. That's just to test everything is working. Anyway, I'm not going to demo this purple owl or the offensive bits that are in there, but I just want to show you how the pipeline connects everything. You remember this command from the previous one, where I just have a technique, and if I pipe it to my other tool, every command has a PO in front, and I do PO technique. He will find in Prelude operator all the atomic red team stuff that I can run. So I gave him a technique from ATT&CK, and I output stuff from another tool. And that was the whole gluing idea behind this. Rip. My timing is really bad, guys. I'm super sorry. So all the techniques that are available in the tool to simulate APT29, for example. And then there's another way, because they're tagged, you could do this, same thing, if you wanted to. Hoppa. I guess that was a bit quick on the last bit. I'm really sorry about that. And that's about it for today. Like I said, this serves as an intro, so that tomorrow if we start to talk about rules, and I mention ATT&CK and this technique ID, and you don't think, hey, where does that come from? But tomorrow we're diving into KQL this time, so running KQL queries with PowerShell directly from ATT&CK via my hatchery repo to find the rules, and then launch that technique all in one line of code. So that's... And that's about it for today. Thanks again for the sponsors. Thanks for your time. And yeah. And because I ate all the time, I'm all yours the whole evening for questions, for if you want to talk about security, I'd love to geek with you. Sorry, I can't.